In this video, we'll deal with another big driver for many asset classes, but particularly for currencies, which is geopolitics. Now, even though geopolitics can be such an important driver for FX, it is often a very underappreciated driver, usually because their outcomes and impact can be highly uncertain and because they often occur unexpectedly. So what exactly are we talking about when we say geopolitics? Well, some basic examples of geopolitics are things like actual wars, trade wars, military confrontations, terrorist attacks. It could be pandemics, sanctions, diplomatic tensions, general elections, trade agreements, and that's just to name a few. The importance and market impact of these events will vary depending on how unexpected they occur, as well as their initial perceived impact, and can have massive ripple effects across major asset classes depending on the type. A quick example is if we get a military confrontation somewhere in the Middle East, that can of course affect oil prices more than it would something like equities or FX, but the ripple effects will be felt across the board. Now, in a really interesting study in 2018 conducted by the SSGA, the study found that the currency spot markets often react instantly to negative events, losing as much value in 2 days on average as they normally do over a month. However, they react more strongly to positive events over the medium term. They further added in their conclusion that while the currency market reaction is in line with conventional wisdom, the study illustrates just how quickly such reactions occur in the FX market. The outperformance of currencies after positive events is a non-trivial result. What their study also revealed was that while effects of negative events indeed begin to wane, currencies experience pronounced overperformance 1 month after positive events. In absolute, non-annualized terms, currencies gain 47 basis points of value despite typically losing around 2%. Contrary to the venting of markets after negative events, positive events are absorbed cautiously and gradually, but to a greater scale. So we have some solid statistical evidence that geopolitics are very important for currencies, and that they can react very fast and very volatile to any major geopolitical events or news developments. A recent example of that impact that geopolitics can have on a currency, we can look no further to the euro and the impact that Russia's invasion of Ukraine had on the currency markets. Now, at the start of 2022, geopolitical tensions between Russia and Ukraine were on a knife's edge. By the end of January 2022, Russia had already amassed a very big military buildup on the border of Ukraine. Now, even though the threat of invasion was taken seriously by markets, the threats of NATO support and the continued assurances from Russia that they didn't intend to invade kept markets sanguine about the idea of a war breaking out. Now, on February 17th, 2022, fighting in the separatist regions of eastern Ukraine had reached a boiling point. Then on February 21st, Russia announced the recognition of 2 breakaway regions in Ukraine, and of course 3 days later announced Russia's special military operation in Ukraine and started their invasion. Now, given that the war was taking place right on top of their doorstep, the war and the possible ramifications of this from an economic and geopolitical point of view saw a very big amount of depreciation for the euro currency in a very short space of time. Now, this made a lot of sense given the uncertainty that the war in Ukraine meant about the economic outlook, food and energy security, and the possibility of another world war. Now, notice the very fast and sharp depreciation for the euro across the board. To avoid cherry picking a single euro pair, I chose a euro currency index in this chart to show that it wasn't just specific pairs, but a broad-based appreciation in the euro. Now, even though the geopolitical risks was a negative shock for currencies like the euro and for sterling, it was a positive shock for currencies like the Australian dollar. The reason for this was due to the Aussie dollar's commodity dependence and correlation. The geopolitical tensions created big concerns about commodity supply imbalances, which was already exacerbated by the massive supply shocks from the COVID-19 pandemic. The supply concerns sent commodity prices soaring even higher, as we can see here by the move higher in the CRB commodity index in blue. Now, the timeline of these geopolitical events and their impact on currencies like the euro in the very short term and the Aussie dollar in the more intermediate term is in line with the study conducted by the SSGA that we spoke about earlier. showcasing how fast and volatile FX markets react to price in negative geopolitical shocks, basically pricing in negative developments with a lot of volatility in a very short space of time. And then in the case of the Aussie dollar, it also shows us how geopolitics can create favorable or positive conditions that takes a little bit longer to be priced into markets, and how meaningful some of those short-term gains can be. Now, this reaction function is also important to keep in mind about how we should evaluate what geopolitical news will be important for a currency and which one won't. As the markets tend to price in geopolitical shocks fairly quickly, more so with negative shocks of course, the market can often reach an equilibrium where so much bad news has been priced in that it doesn't have the same negative or positive reaction. This is where a lot of traders get burned easily, because they take a look at the chart of the euro, for example, after the big move lower had happened. Maybe they weren't aware of how important the initial news was, or maybe they were just chasing the news flow and saw the big moves lower in the euro, and then they get FOMO wanting to join in on the move. So after the euro has gone down a lot and we get new information, new news, new negative news hitting the wires, they normally sell the euro without thinking twice. But instead of going down, the euro can actually see a minor move lower and then jolt higher immediately. This is usually the time when traders will say things like, the market is rigged, or my broker is manipulating my trade, or something in those lines. But no, it's not the market that is rigged or the broker manipulating trades. It's simply a case of so much bad news or good news being priced in that the markets don't react to the additional bad or good news in the same way. Think of it in terms of our three-step analysis process. If so much bad news has been priced in that the new baseline is now mostly negative, it will take much bigger and bigger negative surprises to really surprise the markets. This means with geopolitical news, it's best to trade the first signs of positive or negative shocks. Don't be the player that is late to the party and end up holding a big bag of shorts or longs that get trampled as the big players take profit. That also means that when new and fresh geopolitical themes pop up on the market's radar, make sure that you are reading and learning as much about that as you can if you're planning to trade that theme. Don't be the trader that sells or buys on every news event because you see the price move. Make sure that you are in tune with the current narrative driving that fresh geopolitical theme. That way, when you hear important news hitting the wires, you have already done your three-step analysis process plan and know exactly what to trade and in which direction to trade it.